Hi, welcome to Creating a Mensa Dog. So, in this presentation, I'll be teaching any new dog owners or old dog owners who just haven't fully trained their dog yet how to unlock their dog's full potential and what techniques they can use to make sure that their dog is as intellectually advanced as they possibly can be. So, three key points that I'll be going over are identifying what makes a Mensa dog unique, learning how to train your dog to be like a Mensa dog, and seeing what Mensa dogs can be used for beyond just being a family dog. So, what even is a Mensa dog? I mean, I didn't know what it meant when I first heard the term. So, in decoding your dog, it describes a Mensa dog as a highly trained dog, and that will consistently respond in the desired manner to their owner, trainer, handler's commands. There are many different training strategies that can be used to train a dog, such as classical and operant conditioning. Classical conditioning is pairing an unconditioned response with an unrelated stimuli. For example, any clicker training or Pavlov's dog experiment, where a bell was used when the dogs are fed, and eventually the dogs just started to salivate whenever they heard the bell sound, even though the food wasn't there. And then opera conditioning is just normal training. That's what you typically think of. It can be split up into four categories: positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, and negative punishment. Going into what exactly each of those are in the next slide. And then not only are Mensa dogs highly trained, but they should also be able to display some problem solving abilities and critical thinking uh, that they'll pick up from their training. So types of operating conditioning. Number one, we have positive reinforcement. This is a baseline training method. Uh, give treats, toys, praise whenever a desired action is taken. Negative reinforcement is when there's a constant negative stimuli on the dog that's only removed when the desired action is made. Three, positive punishment. This is when a negative response is added to decrease a negative behavior, such as yelling at a dog when they're doing something bad. And then negative punishment, this is when something the dog likes is removed in response to a negative behavior. So, taking away a toy, something like that. What's the best type of training? Most types of training have their pros and cons, but it's clear that out of the operate conditioning training types, positive reinforcement is the best to use as a base, as it will lead your dog to willingly do the desired behavior, whereas positive punishment can be very misleading if not done at exactly the right time. Um, you need unless you do it right when the negative action happens, your dog isn't going to understand. Like for example, if your dog pees on the carpet and then you get home and you see pee on the carpet, you can't punish your dog for that because they aren't going to know that's why you're punishing them. Um, Negative reinforcement also has its own issues associated with it. It's can be pretty controversial to use things such as pinch collars or constant shock collars, um, as it can just lead to you having a poor relationship with your dog in general. Um, and then negative punishment is actually it's a pretty good option, as removing a positive can be a good way of preventing a negative behavior. However, it isn't exactly great to promote positive behavior, just merely minimize negative behavior. But it's important to know that positive reinforcement should be the base, all operant conditioning types do have a role and should be used effectively to create your Mensa dog. So some confusion points. Dogs can learn tons of different words, and you need to be consistent in what you call what. If you call two things down, they aren't gonna realize that either of the things that you're telling them is down, and the word is gonna become meaningless to them. So you need to be really precise in what you call certain actions. And then another confusion point is the inflection of your voice, your tone. Being sharp will really get the dog's attention, while if you elongate words, that'll calm them down a bit. And then just different tones can mean different things. You can deliver words different ways. That's why clickers are usually preferred in clicker or in classical conditioning, as they are always going to be consistent. Another thing is mixed signals. You want to make sure that what you think is a punishment is actually a punishment to them. As if they don't see it as a punishment, then you're just actually reinforcing the bad behavior that you're trying to get rid of. A lot of the times with bad behavior, ignoring them is typically best. Not all the time. For example, if your dog is chasing after the mailman or something like that, then that you can't exactly ignore because anytime that you ignore that, the dog is getting their desired response of the mailman running away. Um, However, most of the time, what the dogs are looking for is attention. So teaching common commands. First important command to teach after sit is stay. This is because stay is the basis of all the other important commands that for both a family and working dog to know. It's important to also have a unique release word. I don't use okay, for example, because you use that word in so many different sentences so much throughout the day that when your dog hears that, they'll think they won't recognize that that's their release word when you're trying to use it as the release word. Sorry about that. After your dog learns say, you can start having them associate certain spots with certain words. You can say that word, bring them to a certain so that they go to a certain spot and then stay there. Um, which can be just very helpful around the house. And then the final common command that's really important to know for them to know is come or return. And this can be challenging. You should start out with them on the leash and then just saying come or come back and then they'll and then work up from there. Until they're comfortable with or you're comfortable with them being completely free and have faith that they'll know that when you say come, they'll come running back to you. And then it works best if you treat this and really all types of training like a game. Because that'll just make it more fun for them. They'll retain it better, and it will just be overall better time for everyone. And what could prevent your dog from reaching their full potential? Even if your dog isn't the best at a certain task, it's important to stay calm and not get angry with them because then they might start associating that commander word with you being angry, which just result in them being more reluctant to take that action. Another mistake is always giving treats as a reward. You only want to do that at the very start to build the association. Once you build the association, you really you really don't want to be giving it every time. You want to rein it back in until you're just giving it sometimes or rarely, but they're still doing the action every time in hopes that they do get the treat. And then the final big mistake is doing all of the training in a controlled environment. It's important to start in a controlled environment so for your dog to first learn the tricks, but once they learn once they learn the commands, you don't want them to always be in a controlled environment. You want them to be able to do it anywhere you are. So it's important for them to practice outside where distractions might be present, and it's important for them to learn how to block out those distractions. Benefits of having more Mensa dogs. A study based out of Naples, Italy, showed that as shelter dogs' age increases, whether or not they've been trained starts to impact their adoption rates a lot. So they all went through, or the trained dogs went through a 4-week intensive training course, and then some just weren't trained at all. And this course didn't have an effect on young dogs, which makes sense. When people are adopting a young dog, they're expecting to train it themselves. But as the dogs got older, up up in adult dogs and senior dogs, it had a very big effect on the proportion of them that were adopted as almost as uh, most of the adults and seniors that were adopted had gone through that training program. This shows that having more training in dogs could be an effective way of reducing overpopulation of dogs in shelters, which is a huge problem globally. Because people are much more likely to adopt a well-trained dog, especially when they're older. And then another important stat from the same study mentions that up to 25% of the dogs that are relinquished are due to behavioral issues, which again, that 25%, we could cut down on the amount of relinquished dogs by 25%. if if we just train dogs properly, if we just create more Mensa dogs. Um, another benefit of having highly trained dogs is opportunities for specialization in jobs. One specific type of job these dogs can have is in the medical assistance field. Training dogs is obviously very thorough for them, more thorough than likely what a family dog, what you would be doing. But follows a similar process of what Mensa dogs do. It's a mix of operant and classical conditioning. Um, and they learn how to follow, and they learn how to follow human off leash. Are very efficient when called, like with come, and then the one big difference is that these guys always start off as puppies. Um, you don't you really can't use older dogs and train them to be uh, in these hyper specialized jobs. Um, whereas with any old dog owner, old dogs definitely can learn new tricks. They just learn these new tricks a little bit slower than their puppy and juvenile counterparts, which means with these highly specialized jobs, they these dogs are bred for it, and they start training just a few weeks after birth. They start very soon. But with your personal dog, even if they're 10, 20, even if they're 20 years old, you can still teach them new tricks. It just might be a lot slower than it would be as a puppy. And here are the sources that I used throughout this presentation. And thank you.